the kind of head of admissions for Buxton University, and you have the misfortune of listening to me referee, chair, and throw questions at our panel of experts this afternoon. A couple of housekeeping points. So we will be recording the session. If you don't want to appear on screen or appear on a live recording, please do keep your cameras off and your mics as well. For anyone not asking a question or not contributing to the panel, if we can ask that you do keep your cameras off and your microphones on mute in any case, just so we can keep the panel on the screen in large pictures. For any questions, please do feel free to put those in the chat as we're talking. Anything you'd like to raise, please do contribute to the chat. If you would like to ask a question in person, please raise your hand as well. You can use the raise hand function from the icons across the top. So we're here today to kind of talk about how, the challenges faced by Year 12 students as they progress through sixth form and the kind of changing landscape they're facing off the back of COVID. So I'll let our panel of experts introduce themselves. And I'll go around in the order they're appearing on my screen. So if I can get Hannah first to introduce herself, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Hannah Rolly. I'm the Head of Access at Trinity College, Oxford, and my team are really the main link for schools in the Oxfordshire region and the northeast of England and Milton Keynes. And I would say a bit cautious about being introduced as an expert. I think we're all emerging levels of experience in the landscape over the last 12 months, but I'm certainly able to share some of our own personal experience this time.
Great, thank you, Hannah. Next up on my list is John.
Thank you, Owen, and hello, everyone. My name is John Cheek. I'm the founder and director of unitastedays.com. I've previously, before Uni Taste Days, I've previously worked at 3 universities, and I'm just really, I just think the university guidance is just so important, which is the reason I started Uni Taste Days, and whatever can be done during these challenging times to actually really improve the university guidance, I think is incredibly important. So I've got a massive interest in this area and really looking forward to being part of this event again.
Yeah, thank you, John. And next up we have Jodie.
Hi, my name's Jodie. I am a graduate ambassador at Oxford Brookes University. So that means I graduated myself 3 years ago now with a degree in early childhood studies. And our role is to go out and recruit students at Oxford Brookes to all the careers fairs, HE fairs, all over the UK.
Excellent, thank you, Jodie. And last but not least, Lindsey.
Hi, I'm Lindsey Blake. I'm the Student Recruitment Manager for Buckinghamshire University. And my role has always been getting out and about, talking about books. But because we are the kind of university we are, it's been a real mixture of recruitment and WP. So we've got quite a wide range of stuff. And yeah, it's been a funny old year because we've gone from being out and about all the time to trying to talk to sixth formers in this way, or we've had an occasional school visit, but it has been a funny old year this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lindsey. So I haven't seen any questions pop up in the chat yet, but luckily we've had 1 or 2 planted ahead of time. So I think quite an appropriate one to start with is actually what the panel's view are on whether sixth formers are receiving enough support and guidance to make informed decisions about higher education, about the courses they're going to choose, the institutions and providers they want to look at. And do we think that COVID-19, the pandemic, has kind of had an impact on that advice and guidance, and where that's going to be? Lindsey was first, or blinked first to throw a hand in the air. So
you knew it was going to be me. I think it has been an incredibly tricky year, and it's really varied by schools. So I have had one particular school that I've worked with, and they've said it's just an exam factory. All we're doing now is, between lockdowns, between the kids isolating, is trying to get them through their exams. And we're doing our best, but they literally were saying you can't come in. But on the other side is the universities have all gone, this is what we've got and this is what we can do, and that virtual offering and the, you know, before where we never would have gone to we never would have gone to visit a school in Leeds because it's not really our catchment area. Now we can. So I think it's a bit swings and roundabouts. It's been an awful year for schools, and it's been so tricky for them to get the kids to catch up while still giving them this kind of career advice. But I do think they've had a slightly wider range of advice to choose from rather than just their local universities. I'll shush now.
Great. I'm going to come to Hannah next. Hannah was next. Get her hand in the air.
Yeah, I would echo that. We're certainly experiencing, I suppose, a shift at the moment in terms of school engagement. I mean, we've been working with teachers this week, and because of the workload, many haven't been able to engage in programmes as they sort of head towards the half term because the assessment responsibility, they've got their head down really. They've got to take on this additional burden of assessing students at GCSE and A level. And we've also found that teachers are sort of telling us that they haven't necessarily been able to focus in the same way for their year 12s in terms of that information and guidance, and they're a little bit behind. And I don't think that will continue. It's just that we as access teams need to be ready and available to cope with a sort of a slightly different pace and rhythm of the way that we're working. So I think most of us were really quite engaged last year, but certainly this latest lockdown, and as we head into this assessment period with schools, there's just been a bit of a lull, I would say, as people are having to deal with other demands. But we'll need to be ready for the call to action once those assessments have come through, and helping schools catch up with their information and guidance sessions and work with students when they've got less on their plate.
Great, thank you, Hannah. I've seen a few people have dropped in as we've been carrying on. If I can just ask anyone not on the panel just to switch off any cameras or microphones, that would be great. Just so we can keep to the panel. Thank you. John, I think you wanted to come in next on this one, and then we'll go to Jodie after that.
Yeah, thank you, Owen, and really interesting to hear Hannah's and Lindsay's point with it. The only thing really I'd like to add here is I can see things very much from the school perspective as well. I'm married to a school teacher, she's only part-time, but I just see the pressure that teachers are under, and for some schools, I think it's always been the case that some schools have prioritised university guidance more than others, even before COVID, and now it's probably, linking to Hannah's point, is probably more. The difference is more profound now because of the situations in that, everyone kind of talks about schools coping with their COVID protocols, but it's things like bubbles in terms of in-person events, like Laura's having to take loads of stuff into school because she's literally changing rooms all the time, whereas before you could just stay in the same room. And I think and the point I'm trying to make with this is if you're a teacher, that in terms of your time when you didn't have much time before takes a lot of it out of it. So I think from a school's perspective, things are massively challenging, which is linking to Lindsay's point. And the other thing I'd add just on this subject in terms of our schools getting enough is I think over the last year, we've seen such a difference in approach. Now you've got the first, the Uni Taste Tuesdays, for example, we started last year. And actually Lindsay, who's joined us, was the third part of the first one. But that event was ridiculous. We started it just as a stopgap because a lot of schools were asking us about online university events, and we saw just hundreds and hundreds of bookings, and it just got ridiculous. And actually got to the stage that I was dreading Tuesdays because I'm not a natural presenter and I don't enjoy hosting these things. And you see the numbers coming, which is great, but then you think, God, I haven't signed up for this. But now I think that where I'm going with this kind of second point is now I think the challenge is kind of avoiding everyone doing the same thing and schools getting the same messages and universities saying we've got these events, which for a lot of universities are exactly the same. And I think where the events really stand out, and I see that from Uni Taste Days, is where universities are putting on kind of different things, and for schools that'll stand out massively. And I think that's really important going forward, because I don't think online's going away, that we do kind of different things as well as the general same.
Yeah, really good point. Thank you, John. And Jodie, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how the question is, are schools getting the same? And I think because of teachers' workload, as mentioned, that's probably not the case. But actually, if you kind of turn the question on, are the students still having access to maybe the same information? I think there is a lot more kind of focus because universities are struggling to get into teachers. That actually a lot more focus on the students accessing the material themselves. And actually booking onto things via their own kind of initiative. What's great, obviously, for the students that definitely know they want to go to university and are thinking about that progression, I think that really impacts the students that widening participation really tries to focus on that actually probably isn't thinking about university. So if a student isn't, I think there's even more resources than ever. The fact that you can attend 3 different open days virtually on one day that you probably wouldn't have been before means the student has access to way more information if they're putting themselves out there. What is where I think the big challenge we need to focus on going forward is, I think online content is great for students that want that, but even as a university, we are still seeing a big push for students wanting to come on to campus as soon as they can.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, isn't it? There are so many kind of virtual options and so many things universities have put on in place. Yeah, we completely appreciate the workload that our teachers are being put under at the moment, and the things they're being asked to do at really short notice and turn around. With my admissions hat on, and what we're seeing at the moment is certainly that now we can get students on campus. They're really valuing that opportunity to actually see a university that they've maybe been engaging with virtually for several months. So yeah, I think it's really important that there are those options, those virtual options, as well as those on-campus options where it's safe to do so. Great. So we're starting to get a few more questions coming in now, and I think the next one that came in was, do we think that students are more unsure about going to university with the current kind of COVID climate compared to where they'd usually be at? And do we think that's kind of still the case, especially with Year 12 students? Would anyone like to provide some perspective on that one? Hannah?
I think there's certainly a lot more questions about what it's like to experience being at university in sort of lockdown circumstances, and hearing from students that were in the same situation last year. So we've got our first years now who didn't sit A-levels and had a real period of uncertainty, and I think those experiences and stories are invaluable for the Year 12s and 13s coming up. And thinking about making their applications during a really uncertain time. I think, just giving an opportunity for those students to talk about the benefits of still being in education despite everything else that's going on around us. I can see sort of, all sorts of questions coming in around about, gap years. And of course, we are being asked about gap years and whether it's worth waiting. But my question is waiting for what? What will you do while you wait? It is really challenging. You're not going to necessarily immediately get the kind of campus experience that you might have anticipated. But I think we're definitely getting closer to it. Our first years are coming to the end of really a whole year in lockdown. And I would be surprised if we returns to that kind of experience going forward. I think there's still uncertainty around it, but I think sharing experiences from our students who are with us now, who've come through that period of uncertainty and have got some positive stories to tell, is going to be invaluable in encouraging our upcoming Year 12s.
Great, thank you, Hannah. It was then a flurry of hands after that. I think Jodie just about got in first, then John and Lindsay after that. So,
perfect. Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, I think even 2-3 weeks ago, there was a lot of people thinking about that gap year taking the deferral. But I think actually in the last 2 weeks, having been on campus, now we've started opening up campus tours. That attitude now that they have got to see a campus, even if it is just the outside of some buildings, has really changed their attitude, and the fact that they can kind of see the positiveness of that. Actually, if they're allowed on campus to look outside of buildings, then come September, I think they're very hopeful they will be back on campus. And I think that kind of shift has been very dramatic in the last 2 weeks. So I think seeing how that goes, and I think seeing as we come out of lockdowns more, I think that will probably change a lot of students' attitudes if they have that kind of chance to go onto campus and go from there. And I think for year 12, they're probably going to wait until September to make that decision, because if they can see that the current year 13s are back onto a campus and studying a lot more physically, then I think that will really push them to realise that a year from then that it will be probably more back to normal. So I think we just need to give it a few more weeks, I think, to see how things go before I think students start to make them final decisions of what they're going to do next year.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. It's a really valid point that so much can change in such a short period, especially at the moment. So yeah, we'll see a lot of change. So yeah, John, great to bring you in on this one.
Thanks, Owen. The only thing really I'd add to this that just is useful perspective is I was chatting to a student that usually would be going to university now, and he was saying, do I go, do I not go? And essentially the decision for him comes down to, if he was going to take a gap year, which is what his choice will be, what would he do during that year? And usually people joining a gap year do one of two things. They go travelling. Obviously that's not, unless you want to go to certain countries, that's not so much of a possibility now. Or you're going to work, and I'd imagine now it's harder to find work. So kind of the main point I'd have is for students in terms of university. Yes, I think there's various challenges there, but almost what would they do if they are someone that wants to go to university ultimately, and how long do you wait to get to this scenario? And the other point, I think, and one thing that anyone that's on LinkedIn will know, that loads of colleagues now are putting pictures on of campus tours and campus activities, and I think that's just so great to see. And I think for students considering university, actually seeing a campus having had a year of online events is so powerful, and I think that's going to make a massive difference now that we are allowed to hold on-campus events again.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, I completely agree. And Lindsey, you wanted to add as well?
Yeah, so we launched campus tours as soon as we could, and just to applicants, and the appetite for them was massive. And they've been so happy to come onto campus, and they've all been led by the student ambassadors who have been on campus. So all our student ambassadors who've been, they're still living in halls of residence. A lot of them have been doing face-to-face teaching. They've been able to talk about their experience, and so obviously the ones who've been doing the more practical courses have been on more or less all the time. The other ones have been coming back in dribs and drabs, and so I think that's made a huge difference. And we have been backing that up with the digital ambassadors, talking about their life, how they're learning, how they've still been at university. And yeah, it's very much as what I said to my son when he was going last year. So he started in September. Is like, what else are you going to do if you don't go to university? What else are you going to do this year? I think for the year 12s, it's less of an issue because they can see things opening. When we're doing campus tours now, we've got all the posters up for the stuff that the SU is going to be doing, the SU has started doing, and you can just see the campus coming back to life. So that's really great for those students. For year 12, I think they can see that in a year's time it's going to be quite a different landscape. So fingers crossed.
Great, thank you. So I suppose the next question I think that's kind of really pertinent to come on to is with that kind of lost learning for year 12, those lost opportunities that kind of normally would have been a gap year opportunity going out to work. Similarly, a lot of work experience has been called off or been much harder to come by. So I guess what kind of advice would we give to students writing those personal statements who maybe don't have the same work experience they would have hoped for or been expecting to get? Great. Let's go to Hannah first.
I think you can only write about what you've experienced, and admitting tutors are going to be very, very sensitive and understanding of the constraints. No one is going to be penalised during this period for not being able to go out and get work experience. And I'm always an advocate that work experience is only really essential to talk about in your personal statement if it's related to the course that you're applying to. And many times we get students who will dedicate far too much of their personal statement to their work experience, and it doesn't really have a connection to the degree that they're studying to, or they haven't made enough, of a discussion around the kinds of skills that have developed that would be useful for degree level study. So in a way, everyone is in the same boat this year. And I can't imagine that there are any students that have had any meaningful work experiences who are about to write their personal statement. So, it's not really going to be too much of a worry. And I think that we're going to really take that into account when personal statements are read.
Yeah, absolutely. John, you wanted to add to this one?
Yeah, the only thing really I'd add to it, Owen, is just that I always think in life, there's opportunities out there, and I think whenever students write personal statements, you're going to have students that have some brilliant stuff they've got involved in, they can draw on. And now we're seeing more challenges than ever, but there is still opportunities out there. There's you've got the online stuff like in MOOCs that students might wish to get involved in. There might be virtual work experience opportunities. There's now, I'd imagine employers now are more accessible than ever before in terms of the possibilities of work experience. So I think if students, and I'm not saying that students, all of them should do this, but I think if they look for opportunities, I don't think they'll particularly struggle in terms to find them. And I think that's always, in life that there is opportunities out there, and it's a case of taking them. But we've done a few of the Uni Taste Tuesday events, and we've had one, I think, for medicine, one for another subject that's where work experience is very useful. And the speakers there made brilliant suggestions, of which they were that brilliant I've forgotten them. But the thing that I'd take from that is there definitely is opportunities out there, and there is opportunities still to get them. And I think it's just a case of students, really taking them despite the challenges, given that everyone is in the same boat right now.
Yeah, great, thank you, John. And Lindsey.
It was a very similar point around that the virtual opportunities are there. So I know we've launched things like So You Want to Be a Paramedic, So You Want to Be a Nurse. And I think if you can convey in your personal statement your passion for that area and what you've done given the circumstances in the last year. So you can say, I went to a taster day at X. And in many ways, that's really great for the students, the more of the non-traditional students who don't have access to go on fancy taster days and things like that. Being able to access things online has leveled the playing field slightly there if they know what they want. So I know, John, you've done quite a few of career-led ones, and I know a number of other universities are doing that kind of thing. And I think, given the year we've just been through, that's a really great thing to talk about on your personal statement, that you've made that effort, you've made that connection to go and do something like that. Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsey. And Jodie.
I was just going to add definitely that look out for them online activities, but actually kind of going back to Hannah's point of why do we do work experience in the first place, and that is to get an idea of the role. So even if you can't go out and do work experience, showing that you understand that role and the expectations of that role is actually what work experience is, and you can still do that. You can still say, I've been on a taster session and they talked about the role, or I talked to someone and actually say this is what I know the role is, this is what the expectations of this role or this job or this career I'm going into are, and that's something you can still do even without that work experience. So really bringing out the values and the skills, like Hannah said, is really important.
Great, thank you. Just looking down at the list of questions, and I can see the next one. I mean, it's been 25 minutes and I haven't mentioned exams or any kind of assessment there. But the next question was, how can we kind of keep sixth form students motivated with kind of exams being cancelled and kind of big changes to the way students have been assessed, especially this year? Oh, great, Jodie.
So first off, I would say universities know this and are understanding it, and kind of not to worry. There will be considerations taken in. So obviously don't panic about the exams and the grades and everything. That will be taken in. But actually, what's really important is if you are going to university, that you're going to be building on the knowledge you've got. So the more knowledge you have to start with, what information you have, will really help you when you get into your first year of university, having that background knowledge and not having to relearn that or kind of research areas that maybe you would have learned in school. So actually, I'd say it's really important to remember that you are going to go on further after these exams, and that information is still really important. So actually realizing you're going to take that further. So knowing, as much as you know now, as much as possible is beneficial, I guess.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jodie. And I think Hannah was next, and then Lindsey.
Yeah, I'd say it might be a bit misleading to say exams are cancelled. Assessments are really, really happening, and students and teachers are very stressed. I don't think our students are currently. I know many of Year 11s have kind of feel like they've finished their teaching as they head out into Year 12. So there is this question around, well, what will we do to bridge students now as they head towards sixth form? But I think without exams, it's actually a fantastic, as in the old sort of teach to exam, opportunity to explore. You know, one of the things that we're forever talking about is exploring and being curious about your subject. Almost in a way that's, you know, it's purposeful, but it also doesn't have to have a broader purpose other than to really start to think about the things that you enjoy doing, particularly as you come through this really stressful time. And sometimes as a student who's just sat exams, you know, the last thing you want to do is start looking any more into a subject. You just want a bit of downtime. But I actually think, just sort of building on what Jodie was saying there, that your students are going to go on to university into a subject that they are, you know, going to develop a real specialism in, and we're forever saying enrichment. Look for ways to engage with your subject that are fun, and if you're not finding it fun, that might be telling you about the subject that you've chosen. And do it in a way that feels a bit different. It is okay to watch a documentary, and it's all right to sort of, you know, get a little bit lost on YouTube. That's what a subject should really do. It should take you out of yourself. And if it isn't, I'd really be thinking, oh, you know, what have you discovered about this subject? And you know, is it really the right thing for you? So exams, I know it can be really tricky during the end of this period to stay motivated going forward, but I think there are lots of ways that we can help students re-engage with the process of their own learning, and it's really fun and enriching.
Yeah, absolutely. Some really important points in there. And Lindsey.
Yeah, it was more the same. I think what we're going to be doing is a lot of nurturing of our applicants over the summer, with our course leaders and academics, contacting them just to keep them like, you know, this is what we're going to be doing in the first week. This is what your first project is going to be. And it's that kind of giving them a feel for what their university life is going to be like. And there's a whole raft of like marketing and comms going on around that. The accommodation, you know, it's about building that excitement about starting their university journey. So I think this year, probably more than ever, there's a lot more stroking to be done to get them over the finish line, because it is going to be a long period of time. There's a lot of uncertainty around the exams. I think there is reassurance around there because, you know, they are all in the same boat, as we keep saying. It's happened to everybody this year, and I think, you know, decent relationships with your academics and with your university should help to bridge that gap somewhat. Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsey. And John.
The only thing I would add is in terms of actually asking the schools what they want. So I think the whole question in terms of exams and motivating students. Like schools is in the school's interest as well to motivate students and for students to realise their potential. So actually what I think would be a really welcome conversation in terms of linking back to the first point I made about some universities kind of doing the same things as everyone else is actually if you go to a school and say, look, is this a challenge for you? Is there anything you would suggest that we could do to help? And I think schools might actually have, given that they day in, day out are working with those students, they might actually have some really innovative ideas that university could do, but then other universities might then, I won't say copy, might decide to do as well.
Brilliant, thank you. I can see, so Catherine Wiggles actually kind of followed on from that question with, won't read the whole thing, but just in the chat, but just adding about it being such a shift from the previous attitude of working towards that endpoint, working towards that assessment. I think we've kind of hopefully covered a lot of that off with wanting students to kind of engage on their own with their subject, wanting students to kind of feel motivated in their subject choices that way. So hopefully we have picked that off. The other point I'm giving too much consideration to is how this support might be different for non-traditional students in this landscape, or perhaps, not your typical A-level student or not your typical student from a, let's say, privileged background. Are there anything, any kind of separate advice or anything you think we could be doing differently to support those students in particular? Yeah, thank you, Hannah.
I would say really it's a bit more of what John was saying. Again, conversations with schools actually about what's needed for particular students. There's going to be no one better placed to find out what it is that those particular groups of students haven't been able to access. If we're talking about this digital landscape that has been evolving over the last 12 months, and we know that is an issue for these sometimes disadvantaged students having good access to those things. So I do think it's useful to talk to schools in terms of what's going to be helpful. But I also think, although it's been serious this last year, the impact on education, but I think all the issues that were there, have been here now, were there before, and it's more pronounced. So the schools that we were struggling to engage with and find the right ways to engage with may have struggled more, and the children that we struggled to provide adequate support for, guidance and information for, it's been more difficult to do that this year. So I just think that the challenge has been more pronounced, and it's not necessarily different. We've just got to work a little bit harder in terms of finding out exactly what kinds of support we're going to need to offer. I'm certainly thinking of those students who might be at risk of dropping out of education, or maybe losing direction, not really, losing a sense of what's the point. There's a big mental health issue this year as well. So trying to help students re-establish a purpose through their education. And really it's just more of the same, but being much more explicit in terms of who we're trying to communicate that message to. Education, employment, talking about finance, talking about the benefits of for your future career, is all just going to be even more useful now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Hannah. And Lindsey.
Yeah, I know we've had some. It is more of that. I know we've had some success this year with our study hire projects, with working almost on a one-to-one sort of mentoring basis. And I know that's not, you can't do that with every kid that needs that extra support, but it's been really successful this year. It will be interesting to see how the government's extra funding, if I don't know, there's just, we won't go there, but how the government's extra funding for the catch-up, whether any of that will make its way to like helping with aspirations. And we've got our first, on the 9th of June, we've got our first group of sixth formers coming onto campus, and we're really excited about it, because for us that's like, they come here and they see the campus and they see students like them, and the more of that we can do, so that they go, yeah, it is for you. I think it's just breaking down those barriers. But yeah, definitely a bit more of the mentoring and one-to-one is where we see we can make a difference. But yeah, there's not enough time in the day, is there, to make enough difference on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've seen a kind of another slightly different follow-up or slightly different take on it, which is about students who maybe don't know what they want to do or don't know what kind of subject they want to study, and actually having had a year of more limited learning kind of opportunities and access to careers advice, what kind of advice or guidance would we give to students who don't know what they want to study yet or don't know where they want to go? Hannah.
I love those students the most. Just genuinely because it can feel overwhelming not to know, but I love to introduce them to our undergraduates who also don't know what they want to do, and maybe even some of our staff. You know, we're living in a world now where it's absolutely fine not to know what you want to do, and in some regard, you know, it's a great place to start. You can explore, but I know from the sessions that we've been running with young people, conversations with other young people who are uncertain, just help them go through the steps of the decision making when so much is available. And it really is, it sort of takes them back to basics about what do you enjoy? You know, if we look at our timetable in any given day at school, you know, you can automatically cross off things that you definitely don't enjoy, and that will usually leave a few subjects that will speak to you, and then you'd even be able to rank those, and sort of talking through what the opportunities are in those particular subjects, especially if they're left with something that, you know, the people around them don't really understand the purpose of doing that at university. So we might explore, you know, what do our graduates go on and do who've taken subjects that seem less vocational. So I think that's it's a great and exciting place to be, and encourage students to kind of embrace that situation. I think it's fantastic if you don't know what you want to do at sort of 16 or 18.
Right, thank you, Hannah. And John, I think you got your hand in next, and then Lindsey and Jodie.
Yeah, thank you. And just to echo Hannah's point, really, it's students. We ask students to make university decisions when they're, you know, 16, 17, 18, and as Baz Luhrmann said in that song, some of the most interesting 40-year-olds still don't know what they want to do in the rest of their life. So we're asking them at that age to make massive decisions, and it is really tricky. But the thing now I think that's going to really help students is one of the positives of all this. You know, not one of many positives, but one of the positives is just the wealth of online guidance that's available now. And I'm not saying this to plug something that Uni Taste Days are doing, but one thing that we have done is with our Uni Taster on demand events is provide subject introductions. So basically where we have 15-minute introductions where academics from different universities just introduce that subject area. And there'll be students that don't realise what public health is and public health university courses is, and they don't know much about economics, and they can watch these videos. And I know they still have to find them and they still have to seek them, and therefore not all students are going to do it. Like I look back in my university course, God knows why I picked it, but business law and human resource management. So, and I didn't end up working in either area, and I'm not sure looking back why I decided those courses, but and there'll be loads of students like me, and would my younger self have gone out and found these resources? I'm not sure, but now they are available more than ever before, and the hope is that students will find them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John. And Lindsey and then Jodie.
I suppose, John, that does go back to your transferable skills that we're always banging on about, because my degree's in retail marketing, which I've not done for a long time. But yeah, we've been looking at some work around just things you might not have thought about. So like things like logistics management. You know, what is logistics management? Do you think you'd be good at that? Are you good at maths? Are you good at planning? And one of the ones is security. Do you want to be a spy? So he's just trying to put a bit more, you know, people tend to think, and I know some of the students that we work with think university is geography, history, maths, and it is actually putting some alternative ideas out there, alternative career routes, but actually the transferable skills that you get from that, meaning that you could do all sorts of things. And yeah, it is going back to that. You do not, even if you do a fairly specific degree in retail marketing 30 years ago, there's no resemblance to anything that's going on now. But, you know, even if you do a fairly specific degree, those transferable skills you get from that are much, much broader. So, you know, don't worry. People change their careers all the time. I think it is that careers guidance is that you can give them is like, you know, once you've done this, you can do this, 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 and this, and you're not limiting yourself. Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsay. And Jodie.
Yeah, I was gonna echo the transferable skills. I think that's more than ever do a subject they enjoy, and then the transferable skills come across. But also on a practical element, if I'm at a careers fair and someone says, I have no idea what I want to do, there's two ways I tell them to look at it. The first one is to just few random jobs, jobs starting with J or jobs starting with K, just to see kind of what is out there. Or the same with UCAS, go on and start randomly looking at courses, because like's been said, there's a lot of courses that you can't study at A-level or GCSE that you can study at university. I always love when we do a session and I bring up things like surf science, and everyone's like, oh, that can't be a course, and it is at the right university. So yeah, just go on and mess around with the courses and see what there is, because there will be something that does pop up to you at some point. So either via the courses or the careers, and just mess around with them. You don't have to know straight away. But that was a practical tip I give out to a lot of students when they come up to me and say, I don't know what I want to do. Take a prospectus and cross out the ones you know you definitely don't want to do. So that's kind of a way I picked my course. I knew I didn't want to do building or engineering. That wasn't for me. I wanted to do something that helped people. So that left healthcare and childcare. And then I was like, okay, I don't like blood. So that kind of limits a lot of them. So it's sometimes easier to work out the things you don't want to do and be left with the things you might like than picking out a course you really like to start with.
Yeah, I think there's some really good advice in there. Just kind of trying to pick back through the chat, and just to say we do have kind of another 20 minutes left, so do keep the questions coming in. One that looks like it's come up a couple of times, kind of in particular for the panel, is around what kind of online resources are available, and kind of any tips on how to direct students or where to direct students for those extra online opportunities that kind of we talked about a little earlier on. Yeah, Jodie.
So one of the ones I posted in the chat is to look for companies. So a lot of people will look at universities, and every university will have some form of outreach hub or schools and college hub that have lots of resources on that are available. So we have taster lectures, taster sessions, information about university as a general. But I think a lot of people forget to look at like career pages. So a lot of places like the NHS will have lots of resources about their careers. They want to inform students about them. Places like Mini have got information on their website, etc. So don't always just look at universities. Have a look at companies in the career sections, and they will be putting on webinars. I know I helped with a local NHS event virtually where they had current nurses come in and do an online activity with them. So yes, maybe not physical work experience, but definitely experience that is really important. So yeah, university websites, but also company websites are really good to look at.
Thank you, Jodie. And Lindsay, I think you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, and also Helen's just put in the chat about professional association websites. There's loads of stuff on there. And the other thing I was going to say is go to Uni Taster Days. There's loads on there. It's just a quickie.
So, good plug. And Hannah.
Yeah, definitely go to Uni Taster Day. Even I'm going to go now. I just think we encourage students to sign up to things directly. I mean, they no longer need to rely on schools and teachers. They can explore, just following different accounts on social media, for example. So you can just sort of keep abreast of opportunities as they come up. Sometimes don't even need to register. You just pop along on the day. Signing up for newsletters so that things are sort of being regularly popped into the inbox even getting Google Alerts. And I would have recommended this well before lockdown, encouraging students to use Google Alerts with using key words in areas that they're particularly interested in, so that you can have regular alerts popped into your email every day. So it's, you know, it's a nice lazy way to do some research in areas that you're interested in hearing about. So I think it's all of that, you know, just exploring the World Wide Web, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, some fantastic tips there. I think, Lindsey, you wanted to come back in.
I'm back, yeah, because that just reminded me. My daughter's currently in her MSc year at university, and her dissertation and a lot of what she has done is on peat bogs. And like, you go, oh, that's really interesting. But actually, if you find somebody on Twitter and see who they're posting out to, and then follow those Twitter accounts, you get amazing amounts of information. Obviously, I'm doing this to try and find her a job, but I'm quite into peat bogs now. I get newsletters, I get all sorts of experts tweeting. So yeah, it's I think Twitter, LinkedIn, all those kinds of places. Just follow the right people, and the information will come flooding in. And there are a lot of things going on, a lot of seminars, lots of online stuff where you can find some really interesting information for your chosen area.
Great. And Jodie, I'm going to come back around to you as well.
Yeah, I think it's also reminding that actually some of the things that we had before are still really important to students. So simple things like keeping up to date with the news of what's going on in your area, and not just one newspaper, lots of newspapers. Things like Google Scholar, where you can search for topics and get research papers and articles, like it was said in the chat. So go on to university websites, there's mini courses, or the Open University do lots of little mini courses. So these are things that I think have always been there, but actually because of the pandemic have kind of been forgotten about, because people may be overcomplicating it, wanting lots of big actually simple things about talking about what's happening in the news or a book you've read are just as important as some of the more flashier things that we are doing as universities and schools.
Great, thank you, Jodie. And John.
Thank you, and thank you, Lindsey, for the Uni Taste blog. This won't be another mention of Uni Taste, but just one really, I read a really interesting blog. I don't think she's actually at this event, but I don't think she'll mind me saying, from Ruth at the University of Winchester, and she was saying about how students can really, over the summer, really use the summer to maximise future opportunities. And she said, just a really basic point, but I just thought it's so good. She said, talk to people. She said, like, you could, if your dad's an engineer, talk to your dad. And then when it comes to writing a personal statement, you don't put in your personal statement that I spoke to my dad who's an engineer. You say, when researching this course, I spoke to an engineer. And there's people also that will love telling you about their careers and stuff. And linking back to what we said right at the start, and opportunities are out there. And even if it is just a case of just talking to people that are doing a job, and that, you never know, that might actually help students pick university courses. It might attract them or put them off certain courses, and people will be really, really useful, I'm sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you, John. And Hannah.
Yeah, just to reiterate that point, we encourage people to interview people that they know, who are working in areas or studying subjects that they're interested in. I mean, that will stand in for work experience. You know, there's nothing like talking to someone who's doing the job that you're interested in. You know, they all have so much that you can learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've had a kind of another question on a similar theme, which is around kind of extra opportunities, but more in terms of incentives to support students starting at university, especially where they're facing extra challenges off the back of COVID, potentially financially as well. So to throw that one open to the panel, are we aware of any additional incentives or kind of financial support available to students off the back of COVID? Oh, Lindsey and Jodie, it came up at the same time for me, so I'll let Lindsey go first this time and then Jodie second.
going to say let Jodie go first. I mean, there's been a lot in the past year that we've been doing around hardship, and I'm sure most universities have been doing that. I don't think we've got anything specific that we are aiming at students. We already do things like we don't charge deposits in our accommodation, so that's not a barrier to entry at that point. But I think it's more been the students that we already have, the support that's been going through there. So there has been hardship grants and things. But no, I can't think of anything that we've got planned. I mean, Owen, do you know if anything?
No, I know there is kind of support putting in place and kind of a digital support package in terms of especially those digital skills that are needed now that maybe wouldn't have been so prevalent before, and kind of an online study assistant. I
don't think we're handing out hard cash, are we?
Sadly not. And Jodie, I think you wanted to come in as well.
Yeah, I was going to say something quite similar to Lindsey, that I don't think there's many incentives to get the students in, other than the traditional bursaries and scholarships that are available. I think, like Lindsey said, a lot more of it is when they're there and supporting students. So the hardship funds, the careers team have been working overtime to help students try and find roles, part-time jobs that maybe are more online, so like online mentoring, etc. So definitely a lot more, I think, is when they get there. I think the support beforehand is less financial and more in terms of academic and transferring to university. So what to expect, what to bring. I think there's a lot more of the support is supporting them, their well-being and their academic changes more than the financial aspect. That's definitely more when we're at university, I think, because actually I think numbers are showing that students still do want to come to university, and I don't think COVID has really stopped or put a barrier to that as much as actually maybe people think. I think numbers are still stable-ish, even with people with COVID. Because like you said, what other options are there? So yeah, I don't think many universities will be, because students are coming. It's definitely more around support when you're at university.
Yeah, thank you, Jodie. And John?
The only thing I'd link to is about retention, which is kind of following on from what Jodie just mentioned about a second ago. I'm not aware of anything as far as students joining, other than the things that most people will be aware of already in terms of the additional supports available. But retention, I know that's a completely different point, and it's outside of the stuff that we're talking about today. But retention is just going to be so interesting. You know, students, given that they can't attend on-campus events, or haven't been able to for a fair amount of time until now, so they haven't had the opportunity to experience university life as much as they would have done in previous years, and we're not going to know for some time how what the impact of retention is for students. But in terms of actually what universities could do, I think one of the key things they could do is provide a fantastic students experience for students, and that will be that in future years will be something we look back on in terms of impact, and what have more students dropped out this year, will more students drop out next year, and we'll look back on historically, and no doubt a lot of people do PhDs on it, I'd imagine.
Yeah, thank you, John. And Jodie, and then Hannah.
I was just going to pick up what is it, Cheryl put in the chat from Warwick. I think universities are very much anticipating that well-being and financial support of students after they start is definitely has had and will continue to have an impact for the next few years, I'd say, if not longer. And I think that is where, as I was saying, a lot of the effort and time is going into at the moment to look at what support they might need, particularly with that kind of retention idea. I think that is going to be a big thing, looking at the landscape going forwards. And I think particularly for year 12 students looking at university, I think seeing how a university handles the support of the year 13 students coming in September is going to be actually quite a big factor for them looking at what university they want to go to.
Yeah, I agree, Jodie. And Hannah. Oh, got you on mute, Hannah.
It's really the same picture for us in that there isn't really anything that we're offering that we wouldn't have already offered students. I mean, certainly as we start to move back to face-to-face, an outreach programme, we'd continue to fund those students who wouldn't otherwise be able to access them in terms of travel and expenses. And even on an individual basis, if a student was desperate to come for an open day that otherwise wouldn't be able to, we'd really want to support those students. And that isn't something that we would sort of say, we have to do for the 20-odd thousand people that descend on Oxford during open days as we return to those next year. But we'd go out of our way to ensure, as we would in any year, that those students who are the most disadvantaged are supported in the most appropriate way to be able to access our programmes. And I don't think that that's changed. I think we're just even more aware that circumstances might have deteriorated in terms of the economic situation that people find themselves in.
Thank you. So we're coming up to the last few minutes now, and I'm going to be ambitious and try and squeeze in one more question, which is, how can we build a sense of belonging and also kind of stability for students who've had a really disrupted year and a half at school and college? How can we help build that sense of belonging and stability? And I think Jodie was just in first, then Lindsey.
I'll try and keep it quick so Lindsey gets to go. But yeah, definitely, I think that's really important. I think the fact for particularly the year 13s going into kind of September is reminding them that they did achieve their place on their merits, and actually they deserve to be there. And actually, I think particularly showing them how the work they're going to be doing in their first year will get them to their degree in their third year, and how the combination of the whole of their school and college career will get them to that degree, and that they've earned that, even if it might have happened in a different way and in a different environment, really showing them that they are earning their place, and they have, and they will continue to. I think that is probably the biggest way we can really kind of settle them, I guess. I'll hand over now.
So I know what we're looking at is that kind of building the community before they start, so that they know where they're coming, what they're doing, who they're going to be taught with, both from the course leader point of view, but also the members of their course. So who else is going to be there? Some of that is also communicating the current students' experience. And I know that our students, even though some of them haven't had the most brilliant years, you can use their experiences and draw on their positives for that. So I think there's a whole raft of stuff to do around that, to say you belong here, and we do that book, you belong to us, you belong to books, you're ours now. But is that belonging, making them, just easing them through, because I do think there will be, not that obviously there's a piece of work to do once they've started, but it's actually getting them over that finish line, getting them to enrol. And so I think there's a lot of comms for us to be able to do it around there, but also putting them in touch with each other within GDPR guidelines, but putting them in touch with each other so that they can see that there are people like them at university.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And Hannah, I think you need to jump in on this one as well.
We're just trialling something this year in a very small way at Trinity College. We know that we wanted to strengthen our offer holders' support, particularly this year, because our offer holders have never been to Oxford. Oxford, as you can imagine, sometimes worries people more than other institutions about, their anticipation about coming and feeling that they are going to meet, other human beings. And so we really wanted to support that. So we're running a really small pilot this year for a very small group, but a very targeted year 13s. And it's a coaching programme that will start hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks. and continue all the way through their first year with us. Really so that it's about making sure the transition is as smooth as it could be, and that they've got somebody that they've got access to really help them problem solve and develop skills that might raise confidence in terms of who to approach, where to go to get advice, particularly if you feel that you come from a background that you're not automatically seeing reflected in the individuals around you, that you feel less confident about saying, I need a bit of financial help, I can't really afford to travel home. I mean, we don't have all year round contracts, for example, at Oxford. So, that's a really big challenge for some of our students who've got further to go. So we're hoping that that's going to help, and particularly for this year where those students have not been able to form the kinds of bonds or feel looked after by us.
Fantastic, thank you. I think we're just at time. So I guess all that's left to say is to thank everyone for joining us, and hopefully we provided some different perspectives on how we can continue to support students in the kind of the challenges faced over the last year. I'd just like to say thank you to our panel members for giving up their time to kind of support this, and thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye all.